Alex here with the legal nuts and bolts video on making mistakes. I've kind of mentioned here and there, whenever I have the opportunity, that my case was not an example of somebody who just went straight into the court case or went straight into the court system and won from beginning to end. I didn't even win half the time. It was probably slightly less than half the time. And even then, that's only because in the last 2 years, I just had a whole chunk of victories right at the end. If not for that, I would be telling you a very different story. But anyway, most of the time, probably slightly more than 50%, I did not win on an issue. And there's 2 points that I want to bring up in this video. First point I want to bring up is that you can take a loss and turn it into a victory later on. And the second point I want to make in this video is that not all losses are fatal to the case. You can make certain mistakes and it doesn't kill your case, it just slows you down, which does suck, and it feels torturous when you're in child custody cases and you want answers. You want to win now. You don't want to win 9 months later. But if you don't have a lawyer and you're representing yourself, you kind of have to take what you can get. And one of the biggest mistakes that non-lawyers make are procedural mistakes, and those can sometimes be overcome. So I'll go ahead and start with that example. When my ex first got the temporary protective order on me, and then it was extended into an extended protective order, I did not know how to challenge the order. Eventually, the time to appeal lapsed, and in hindsight, I realize now that I couldn't really have appealed that order anyway. But one of the things that I could challenge and did challenge was the fictitious address that she got using the protective order. She took the protective order to the Secretary of State and got a fictitious address. So I tried to do all my research as a non-lawyer because no lawyers were going to do it for free. I didn't have any money, and nobody was going to help me pro bono. Lawyer in the Library program had no good advice for me at all because nobody had a clue as to how to challenge it. In fact, most people said there was nothing I could do. And I just wouldn't accept that. So I looked at the statutes and I found something called a petition for judicial review. And I thought, hey, this makes sense. I looked it over, I read it. It sounds like I can file a petition for judicial review and a judge will review whatever it is I brought to their attention. And I was wrong. And I didn't figure it out till way later. I filed the petition for judicial review when I alleged that my ex lied and got the fictitious address and it wasn't fair and I wanted to challenge it, and I never committed domestic violence and I wanted to approve it. And the judge denied my petition. I appealed it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that the judge was right, but his reasoning was wrong. He was right in denying my petition because under the statutes, I could not challenge anything with a petition for judicial review unless it had unless the issue followed a certain list of criteria, and one of them was that a decision was made after hearing both me and my ex, a formal decision. There's a lot more to it than that, but I'm not going to go into it. And I was like, well, that's not fair. Of course, I wasn't involved in the process. All you do is file an application. You take an application, you file it with the Secretary of State. I'm not involved in the process. Yet that precludes me from getting relief through petition for judicial review. Well, it turns out that's exactly how it works. I was wrong. Was it fatal to my case? No. It just meant I wasted like a year and a half filing the wrong piece of paper. I found out that the right piece of paper was a petition for writ of mandamus. This is one of the things that non-lawyers don't understand, including me. So I lost a case, I lost my appeal, but I didn't give up. And that's one of the things that I was trying to mention when I talked about the 2 ways to approach this. Sometimes a loss is not fatal to the issue or to the case. Sometimes a loss will just slow you down. That's what it did. It slowed me down because I filed a petition for writ of mandamus and I won a publication. And I used that publication to have her fictitious address canceled. And that was the first domino in a chain reaction of events that led to me getting primary physical sole legal custody and terminating our parental rights. If I would have quit, that would have never happened. So just keep that in mind when you're representing yourself. You may make a mistake, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be fatal to your case. That happens, I think, more often than not. And it's better that you don't make the mistakes. It's better that you don't waste years going down the wrong rabbit hole. But sometimes representing yourself, like I mentioned earlier, you take what you can get. And in this case, it worked out for me. It just took a long time. The other point that I wanted to make is you can oftentimes turn a loss into a victory later on. So one of the things where I did this was, it was really a whole lot of emotions where I was trying to get my ex to do certain things. Like, for example, give me the benefits cards so that I could use them if I ever had to take him to the doctor. Let me know when when I could show up to a doctor's appointment, stuff like that. I'm not going to go into all these examples because there's way too many to bring up. So I'll just bring up the biggest, most obvious example. And that was my ex winning on the issue that our son would be exchanged at midnight. And the way she did this was by settlement, which is one of the reasons I warn people not to settle unless you're sure it's best for your kids. I settled on this issue because I was getting concessions in other areas. And I thought, well, thanks for letting me have these concessions. Since you're letting me have these, I'll let you have the midnight exchange. And what I wasn't thinking about then was that you're wheeling and dealing over what's best for your kids. And it's not great for kids to be exchanged at midnight. They get woken up in the middle of the night. So she won that issue. I filed a motion to change it later on. The judge denied it using res judicata. She won a second time. I filed a motion a third time because he was going to school, and the judge granted it in part and denied it in part. He took away one of the midnight exchanges that was during the week, but he left the one that was on Saturday because it was the weekend. So I lost on this issue more than once. How did I turn it into a victory? Later on, when I modified physical custody. The basis, the legal basis that my ex used to win before was I was able to turn around and use it. No, sorry, that was my wife. I was able to turn around on a motion to modify physical custody and use it against her to get physical custody. So when it came down to the analysis on physical custody, which is best interest of the child analysis, she could not defend herself using res judicata. She could not defend herself using contempt of court defense, defending on contempt of court principles. She could not defend herself using any of those other things. She had to defend herself on best interest of the child, and she lost. She lost horribly. The judge was beyond livid to know that she insisted on our son being exchanged at midnight for so long. So she was upset. My ex was upset because she kept telling the judge, well, the other judge said it was okay. And she kept on telling my ex, no, he didn't say it was okay. He just said he couldn't do anything about it legally in the context that Alex was challenging it. Now that Alex is challenging it under best interest analysis, I can do something about it, and I will. And she used the fact that my ex not only insisted on midnight exchanges, but defended it at previous hearings and won against her to deprive her of physical custody of her son. So that's a perfect example of how you can take a loss in one legal area and use it against your opponent in another one and win. In child custody cases, this is quite common because there's so many different types of matters that come forward in those types of cases: child support, contempt of court, modification, relocation, and they all use different standards. And something that might not work under one will work under the other. And this is an example of something that really blew up in her face, and it blew up big time. If not for that, she may have not lost physical custody. It's possible. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video.